Good afternoon, students. In the previous video, we started our chapter Era of Cold War and we discussed about the two world wars and after that the starting point of Cold War. Let us revise once and then we start the next concept of this chapter and very important, that is Cuba Missile Crisis. So first, as we know that the first world war was started from 1914 to 1918 and the result that was allied nations won the battle, because the first world war was fought between the two superpower, the two super blocks. One was central power and one was the allied powers. After the first world war, as you know that League of Nations came into effect in 1920 to stop the second world war, but unfortunately the world faced again the next war in the year of 1939 with the invasion of Adolf Hitler over Poland. So this was the second world war, and then we saw that it was also between the two super blocks. One was allied forces, allies or allied, and the axis. Germany, Italy and Japan was the part of Axis nation: Germany, Italy and Japan. Allies: USA, UK, USSR and France. Result was same, that the allied nations won the battle. Then the super government or the international institution came into force, that was United Nations on 24th of October 1945. 24th of October, as you know that we are celebrating as the United Nations Day. On the 24th of October, 51 countries signed over the UN Charter, and India signed over the UN Charter on 30 October 1945. After the end of Second World War, as we discussed in the previous section, that the two atomic bombs were dropped by the United States of America over the Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki on 6th of August and 9th of August 1945. Japan surrendered and the Second World War came to an end. But after that, on the international level, the two new superpower came into effect, that was USSR and United States of America. So Cold War. Cold War was started with the end of the Second World War. After that, the world was divided into two superpowers. One was called Eastern Alliance, one was called Western Alliance. As we discussed earlier, that USSR was the head of Eastern Alliance and United States of America was the head of Western Alliance. So Cold War was the tension between the two superpowers to show that we are the best. Ideology: the USSR and USA had the different ideology. It supported the socialism and communism. Socialism and communism, and it supported liberal democracy and capitalism. Both were opposite. Both were opposite. USA formed NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in 1949. 12 member countries were there, and USSR formed Warsaw Pact. Warsaw Pact in 1955. And how many member countries? 15. So Cold War was the tension between the two superpower, United States of America and United Soviet Socialist Republic. The next concept of this chapter is related with the Cold War. I want to tell you again that this Cold War was the war between the two superpower and by their allies. Yes, we are discussing here about three countries in the Cuba Missile Crisis. One is USA, second is Cuba, and third one is USSR. Cuba was the coastal country of United States of America. It was much nearer to USA, but it was the follower of United Soviet Socialist Republic. There was a tension in the minds of Nikita Khrushchev. First of all, you know about the heads of these countries. Cuba, Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro was the head of Cuba. USSR, Nikita Khrushchev. Nikita Khrushchev was the president of USSR, and John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was the head of United States of America. So it was nearer to USA, but it was the ally to the USSR. Both financial help and diplomatic help was given by USSR to the Cuba. So in the minds of USSR, in the minds of Nikita Khrushchev, there was a fear that someday USA will invade over Cuba and capture it and remove the socialist government from there. Then Nikita Khrushchev decided to set up nuclear missiles in Cuba. It was the first time when America, United States of America, was under the reach of any nuclear missile. When the Nikita Khrushchev planted their nuclear weapons at where? At Cuba. So there was a great tension among the three countries between the USA, between Cuba and USSR. The world was faced because the thought that there would be the next world war, there would be the next atomic war, nuclear war, or the third world war. So let us discuss one by one. So we start the next concept, that is Cuba Missile Crisis. In April 1961, this Cuba Missile Crisis took place in the year of 1962. The leaders of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic were apprehensive of an American attack on Cuba. Yeah, there was a tension in the minds of Nikita Khrushchev that someday this country would invade over Cuba. Fidel Castro was the president at the time. Cuba was an ally. Who was the president of Cuba? Fidel Castro. Cuba was an ally of the Soviet Union and received both diplomatic and financial aid from it. Nikita Khrushchev was the leader of the Soviet Union. In order to convert Cuba into a Russian base, Nikita Khrushchev placed nuclear missiles in Cuba in the year 1962. In order to get Khrushchev remove these missiles and nuclear weapon, the American President John F. Kennedy ordered American warships to intercept any Soviet ships heading to Cuba. So there was the tension in the minds of John F. Kennedy that it was the first time when America was under the reach of any nuclear weapon, because to set up the nuclear missiles by USSR in Cuba. So he ordered to the American army to stop the ship of USSR. Because the installation of these weapons put the US for the first time under fire from close range and nearly doubled the number of bases and cities in the American mainland which could be threatened by the USSR. So जो सबसे बड़ा डर था, ये पहला समय था कि संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका का एक बहुत बड़ा हिस्सा किसी परमाणु शक्ति के रीच के अंदर आ गया था, क्योंकि यूएसएसआर ने बहुत से न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स को क्यूबा के अंदर स्थापित कर दिया था. तब जॉन एफ कैनेडी ने अपने सैनिकों को आदेश दिया कि वॉरशिप्स को समुद्र में उतारने का उन्होंने निर्णय किया, ताकि वो क्या कर सके, जो अपने ऊपर आया हुआ संकट है उसको क्या कर सके, रोक सके. A clash seemed imminent in what came to be known as the Cuba Missile Crisis. The Cuba Missile Crisis was a high point of what came to be known as the Cuba Missile Crisis. The Cold War is referred to the competition, the tension and a series of confrontation between the USA and USSR backed by their respective allies, NATO and Warsaw Pacts. So this was the incident which took the world into danger, that the world would be headed to the next world war or the third world war. But the result was very peaceful. And what was the result of Cuba Missile Crisis? That the world has breathed a collective sign of relief after the superpower reached an agreement ending the immediate threat of nuclear war. Russian leader Nikita Khrushchev has agreed to dismantle all Russian missiles based in Cuba and ship them back to Soviet Union. And John F. Kennedy also promised to Nikita Khrushchev that in the near future we would never invade over Cuba. So this was the happy ending of the Cuba Missile Crisis. But some people said, some politicians said that USSR never dismantled its missile from Cuba, but after the disintegration of USSR in December 1991, all the missiles they would dismantle from the Cuba military base. So this was the description of Cuba Missile Crisis. Thank you and have a nice day.